I've been reacting to VTuber lore videos for almost 2 years at this point, and everyone always comes to me with all their questions, like, do you need VTuber lore? Do people care? Is it a make or break for your debut? Honestly, I don't even know the answer to most of those questions because it's not a simple answer. I also want to highlight other people's opinions on it because not many people are talking about it. To be fair, there are not many people actively making content about VTubers. So let's go and listen to what Koefficient, a avid VTuber clip reactor, has to say about VTuber lore.
Do people actually care about VTuber lore? Let's talk about it. Well, just like with a lot of things, it depends on the person you're talking to. For example, a lot of people fall in love with creating lore on a specific character. A really great response in my Twitter thread that I'm about to show later described it as creating a D&D character.
That is so real though. Your VTuber is an OC that you're using to represent yourself, but not necessarily being yourself. And you're just creating a backstory, you're creating stats, you're creating powers and setting and what they do in any given situation that they will be put into, like if you make a secondary lore video. So that's actually not a bad comparison.
Now, I've never played Dungeons and Dragons. However, I do know that a lot of people go all in creating their lore and creating their personality and kind of stepping away from reality to be able to live out a fantasy or an alter ego. But alongside creating interesting stories for their fictional characters, there are also people who love consuming it. And of course, they find the lore fascinating because it makes it easier to understand a character and seeing where they come from.
That's me. That's just me.
And the VTubing space is no exception to this. It's filled with interesting characters, interesting VTubers, and a whole bunch of rich lore. And there's no doubt in my mind that VTubers also love creating lore because it makes it easier to depict their emotions and of course to be able to express their personality in an artistic way. Hololive is probably the best example as to how to use lore to their advantage.
I was pondering whether he was right, and I think yes, he is right. I thought he was gonna say that Hololive is the one that makes the most extravagant lore, because I would argue that Fishoujo, for a head count, was doing a better job at that. But Hololive is, I think, one of the few agencies that actually uses their lore as content and as a part of like something that persists beyond debut.
The amount of memes, jokes, animations, etc. that their community uses to be able to make
as well.
All sorts of different fan projects. Like that fan animation of Gura and Detective
Amelia. Oh, that's
Amelia.
so good. I saw that.
It was really good, and it used the specific VTuber's lore perfectly. Amelia being a detective, Gura being a fish out of water, or a shark out of water, I guess, to tell a pretty cool story. So we know that in the VTuber space, in terms of like the actual VTubers themselves, they like lore, obviously. And that's great. However, I want to know from the perspective of the viewers, what do they think? Do they care? Are they invested in it? Do they want to continue seeing it? Or do they just want to find a new streamer that is fun to watch and it looks nice? Well, I was interested and I made a Twitter thread asking people who watch VTubers what their thoughts on this is.
My tweet didn't make it. I wrote an entire paragraph, an essay, if you will.
This Twitter thread is filled with not only viewers, but VTubers themselves. And I'm going to be looking as much of these as I can, but obviously there's a lot of responses. If you guys do want to take a look at the tweet and see all people's responses, I'll link it in the description. However, I'll be looking at the most interesting ones. And if you're interested in my opinion on this topic, I'll be sharing it right after we go through this thread. I have a specific opinion on VTuber lore, and I think that I would like to share it. But first, let's see what other people think, huh? Roy Chiato, my boy. Roy! What does he say? Lore is more fun than a necessity. Sometimes it's cool to see what the thought process was for a character or a setting, especially if they drastically change their appearance. But for new VTubers, 100% unnecessary. It's more of a treat for you and your community to enjoy.
He is right. If you're gonna drastically change something about your branding, having a lore video to like bridge the gap as a way to, in kayfabe, explain it, that's really good. But yeah, if you're new, you're introducing yourself anyway in your debut, so you don't need a lore video to do that for you. But for people like Roy, who went through like a major branding change and is going to do that again, having some lore to explain what happened in between without having to go through like VODs or old videos to find that, that's a good way to use VTuber lore.
That's actually a point that I never really thought of, is the fact that they do use lore to be able to change their appearance. Let's say that a specific VTuber likes to have a certain look, and then about a couple months later, half a year later, they're like, I want to switch it up completely. I want to look completely different. So they think of a lore reason to be able to compensate for that drastic change look.
Sorry, what did he say?
Think of a lore reason to be able to compensate for that drastic change look. Change look? Look change. Or what am I even talking about, dude? ESL problems. Jesus. Now, obviously.
Okay, sorry. I was distracted by him mispronouncing a word, and I feel that because I make mistakes like that all the time. Really easy example is Iron Mouse. Like, she changes her look so often, and like, you can still tell it's her. Like, that's just the power of her character design. She doesn't need to be in a certain art style or a certain hairstyle. She, as a character, is developed enough that it doesn't really matter what model she's in, you can recognize her. For a lot of VTubers, that's not the case. But with Iron Mouse, you see often that she has a new lore video for a new look. Like, for a lore reason, like her angel form or her demon form or her demon queen goddess form. Right? Even if she doesn't have a full-blown lore video, she often has some kind of short animation or some animation that plays in the start of soon screen that kind of explains the importance of that form. And for other VTubers, where if they change their outfit or something, but them becoming less recognizable or full change in aesthetic or just what their character is, a lore video could bridge that gap, like I said earlier.
See, this is from the perspective of a VTuber, but that is a new perspective that I wasn't really thinking about before. And it makes total sense to me. But the biggest thing to take away from this is that it's obviously just fun more than anything else. It's not a necessity. Nothing's really a necessity other than breathing, eating, and farting. Don't add that. Don't add that. Don't add that. I like lore because it adds a whole layer of fun and creativity to fan art and discussion, whether it's drawing based on their powers or tier lists dedicated to power scaling lol.
It's a really good point, considering that a lot of charm from a character, because VTubers are playing a character, is not only from the voice acting or the person behind it, but also what their position in the world is, what their powers are. That's why video game characters like Genshin or anime characters are so beloved. Like, on their own, they're not that interesting, but in the world they exist in, it gives context. And if you want to make fan content or just have fun with it in your own time, aside from the official content, having that extra context can help get those creative juices rolling. Juices are not rolling, Ezzy. What are you talking about?
I'm gonna bring this up again, but absolutely Hololive is killing it in this department. If you guys have gone to the Hololive subreddit, it's filled with things like this. Drawings based on their powers
is a
and
Hololive
tier
boy.
lists.
That's
Callie
why he
being in
keeps
the
referencing
underworld
Hololive,
depicted
but
as a
goes for
Grim
any
Reaper,
agency, yeah,
obviously.
really.
Fauna being like Mother Nature, obviously. Gura being like the Queen of Atlantis and stuff like that. A lot of fan art comes from this type of stuff, and that makes sense. For artists, that must be a gold mine because they get more inspiration to be able to draw something cool if the VTuber has lore.
You even see it with Minecraft YouTubers. Like, you can draw their Minecraft skin in a more detailed variation, but I see the best fan art come from like SMPs that have some sort of lore, or a character that have some quirks that could be considered lore. For example, there is this SMP called Last Life, or whatever variation of the life series you want to go for. I have seen people make entire animatics based on some events that are obviously traumatized, and it's sometimes from high quality than some of these VTubers lore videos, just because like there is some crumble of story and people take it and build on that. You can build entire stories, you can build an entire world, but if you have dedicated creative fans, your lore is just the first brick. They'll build the rest. It's out of your hands. Just don't try it.
And don't even get me started on the power scaling tier list, because there's plenty of those and they're really funny. Sometimes I see some that are like ultra powerful apex predator tiers, and then you have like Achan, who's able to rein in all these mythic beings, you know? Achan is the manager, but I'm sure you all knew that. So from an artist
she graduated,
and from a
sad.
viewer perspective, it is pretty fun to be able to do cool things like this. But I'll be honest with you, Hololive is really the only one that I see this being super prevalent. Of course, other communities and other agencies have this too.
Yeah.
But Hololive is the one that I'm mostly in, and I usually see it most there.
I'm not even part of the Hololive community, and I still agree with him. Like, for other agencies, you do see it happening, but for most part, it's just like character art and not really lore art that you're seeing, and it's mostly just put focus on some assets. Don't ask further questions about that. Going back to something that was said earlier, that Hololive is one of the few agencies that actually utilizes that lore consistently even after debut. For most people, like, it happens at debut, it sometimes gets mentioned, but it's kind of like left alone after that. But Hololive keeps it, like, even with future outfits, but future releases of songs, music videos, or sometimes even merch, it still keeps a prevalent spot, and you can tell that the way they're handling their content regarding their character is very different than other agencies. And you can see that a lot of people that receive a lot of fan art are ones that dive into their lore as well, even in the indie scene. Like, for example, take Shoto. Like, this whole demon slaying thing, I see so much incredible art for surrounding demons, or even the demon that he French kissed in his lore video, which I do not see from other indies, even in Shoujo, because their lore only exists as like a separate entity.
I generally like it. Hot take incoming though. I feel like when Council debuted, I felt like they chose to lean into the lore a little too much during their first 6 months, and it really put me off of them. They seem to have dropped that, and it's for the better.
I feel like that's not per se the fault of the lifers. I feel Council was one of the first bigger VTuber groups in the EN sphere. So them leaning into their lore at start is probably that they wanted to do something new, or they just didn't know what to do with it. A lot of VTubers from around that time were doing the same. And yeah, it started putting people off because you're watching a content creator and not a anime character streaming, right? So there is a good balance between between too much and not enough. And yeah, they definitely leaned in a bit too much, but they learned and they shook that off, and it is working out for them greatly. Another example is that for a while, Fox Akuma was constantly doing RP after like one of his outfit debuts, but a lot of people were put off by him constantly being in character, even though he was technically always in character. This was like to a degree that wasn't really precedented, especially in Nichi Sanji. And it's a learning curve. Someone had to do it first. Someone had to find out it was not a good idea, and we all learned from it.
This comment is an interesting one because I'll be completely honest, I generally feel like this is more common than people would think. Well, a lot of people really like the lore. Some people can lean the other way, but I think a lot of people are pretty silent on it. They just let the VTuber do their lore thing, and then it's back to your regularly scheduled broadcast of playing Minecraft or something. Lore can be kind of cool for the debut. After the debut, it's usually pointless unless the VTuber puts effort to keep it relevant.
Exactly this. This is like my biggest pet peeve. Some people put a lot of effort into VTuber lore. They use it on debut, and they completely neglect it. And often the case is that the VTuber lore barely reflects who they are as a content creator, as a streamer. So if you watch it, you still don't know anything about them. You just have a wrong impression. What I also don't understand is when people have their lore video, they play it on their debut, but they don't archive it, they don't post it to YouTube, which I think is a waste, not only because you spend time and money on it, but also don't you want people to be able to find it later? Some people don't even do that, so it's just gone into the ether. There's so many lore videos that I have like watched on my channel, that I watched on Twitch, that never ever were posted on YouTube, not even on a VOD channel, not even on a fan channel. So literally it's lost media aside from my reaction to it, which I feel like should not happen. But it's their choice. Just find it always.
This is something that I see that, like I said, to kind of piggyback off of my last point, is more common that you realize. It's usually like a one-time thing, or maybe they bring it up when they re-debut with another lore. Actually, with Roy from the earlier comment, he's like a coffee VTuber that has you know, like a bar and stuff like that.
We watched this lore video earlier in this current stream, and it will likely be posted separately from whatever this will be on YouTube. So if you're interested in my reaction to his lore, which is really good, it's ASMR, you're gonna love it if you love smooth voices. Check that out, link in the description. Maybe. But yeah, Roy's cool.
So he has like coffee time or something. I've seen some VTubers have like tea times because their VTuber loves tea or something like that.
That's Underhill. Like, he was a tea sipping owl man, and he had a podcast called Virtual Tea House. He made videos on tea. So he had like actual tea involved in his lore, and tea as in like gossip and drama. Not the right words, but the best way to describe it. And now he's a part of a burrowing owl bakery. It's just cute.
They incorporate their lore into their content. Takahata, that's another one that's a great one because he's a bartender and his content is all about people coming into the bar
I love
and
his
having a good
bartending
time.
streams.
Stuff like
So
that
chaotic.
is really good, but I feel like those are exceptions, and the majority of them, actually I shouldn't really say the majority, it's pretty 50-50. After their debut,
not
they
50-50.
usually just play games and they enjoy their time on stream.
It's absolutely not 50-50. Like, it might seem like that because among the bigger VTubers, it might be a bit more close to 50-50. But all overall, most VTubers, they just have a backstory for the character, never touch on it again, and they are just a regular streamer using a VTuber model. Like, the only existence of their lore is on their debut, and sometimes when they explain something about their outfit.
The chat, and they make content and funny things and entertaining things like that. So this is an interesting comment for sure. VTuber lore is not really necessary, though. I do love watching VTuber lore myself.
Yeah,
I
me
enjoy it a
too.
lot. But kind of as I was mentioning before, completely a different side to what we saw just barely. But yeah, this person really likes VTuber lore compared to the other one. Oh boy, we got some more. Personally, I feel like the lore is superfluous. Like, unless the VTuber is going to be continuously enacting upon or expanding that lore, though some sort of on-stream story arc telling, I don't see a point to it. It's cool, sure, but I don't see the point of it.
I agree. Sometimes I watch amazing lore that leaves open-ended, ready for a sequel or any expansion, and then people never do. So the only thing I'm feeling at the end of the day is I feel like I'm conned out of content, or that I was getting my hopes up, which feels unfair because these people still put their like blood, sweat, and tears into making these lore videos. But like, why makes like really extra lore that's very clearly meant to be expanded on and just never touch on it again, or never make a sequel, or like you just do one giant lore video for a side outfit, but then you do bigger updates and never make more lore. Maybe that's just a personal pet peeve. I don't know, but that's just me talking, I guess.
Now, I don't know if I would go as far to say that it's pointless, because
Not
like I was
pointless,
mentioning
but
before,
still,
it's a great way to be able to introduce to the masses. Also, kind of knowing where they came from is also kind of a nice thing. Like, for example, let's say that they got isekai'd, or you know what, let's even go a little bit further. They're safe. And they're actually
like
an angel that wanted to do cool and the angels wouldn't let them. So to be able to do cool she went to hell and she took over hell, became Satan.
Just
and now she's just here playing video games, and that's why she likes video games and can't really go anywhere, because she's in hell. She rules hell, and that's all she wants to do is just play video games and have fun with people. So I think introducing a specific character is really cool and stuff like that, and I don't think it's superfluous in that case.
I feel like that's different because it's a backstory. Like, it's just like putting a character in the context and how they got in that context, versus how some people make entire storylines. Like, it can almost be a manga or an anime, right? There's a difference, I feel. Like, a lot of lore is just introduction. It's just you getting to know that character and how they got where they are. But I think this comment is talking about people that have insane storylines, like maybe 1,000-year war, or my people were murdered by another planet, right? And like something that is not really an introduction, but just a storyline that the character exists in, that's completely separate. I feel like that's what the commenter was more aiming at.
Afterwards, I can see people just not caring about lore. Introducing somebody, I feel like, is where it really excels.
Yeah.
But I get people not really caring about lore at all. They just want to see a VTuber that's pretty, or that's cool and entertaining.
Yep.
And they just want to see them play video games. I can see that. I'm pretty neutral on them, although it's always cooler when VTuber lore gets updated to include their community and inside jokes.
Yeah,
as well as
I love
involving
that.
other people, like how some corpo have done. Big example is how fans interpreted Hollow Myth with insane animations and the Ame-verse.
This is my favorite feature of lore, where there's like crossover with other people's lore, or people have cameos in it, or there are like inside jokes and memes in it that make it connected to the content, right? There's just so much lore that can exist in a vacuum, and if it can just not exist, then nothing would change. But some lore actually integrates more, and I feel like if I'm part of a community and that is included in the lore, that makes the lore more special to me and more memorable, and makes me care more. Like, something can be cool, but to be fair, a lot of these VTubers have really cool lore. I just need something personal to actually care beyond just watching and being like, oh heck yeah, that's amazing.
That's actually a really good point. I really do enjoy it when VTuber lore gets updated to include inside jokes and community jokes. That's probably my favorite version of VTuber lore. Not when some intricate backstory gets involved, but when community-driven jokes get incorporated in. Like, for example, Yago being best girl. That is in a lot of the different Hololive VTubers lore, because Yago is best girl, and
He really is.
That's how it is. The community created that, and a lot of the VTubers have endorsed it. When the lore gets written by their community, I think I enjoy that much more than regular lore building But that's just me personally.
I feel like the thing with that is that when you're writing your own lore, especially as a corporate VTuber, you didn't come up with the concept, so you're not as passionate about it. But fans, they like voluntarily decide to stay and engage with it. So they have a different attachment to the storytelling. And often like VTuber fans are so creative and so talented. There might be actual writers among them that can just literally do a better job than you. You don't see that as often with indie VTubers. It does happen, but not as often because these people created their own character. They have their own things with it that they care about and find important or references to themselves. Yeah, it just depends. Long story short, VTuber fans are creative. And because it's like a massive amount of people coming together and collaborating on it, it gets even more creative and like detailed and everything.
I don't care if it isn't there, but I love when a VTuber really gets into their own lore and has fun with it.
Exactly.
I think Narissa is a good example. I haven't really gotten into Narissa's own lore, but I do know about the Jailbird.
I've only watched her debut lore, so I don't know what else she added on it, but I can see her having fun with it solely for the fact that she loves singing, and singing as like it's just a demon of sound, and singing is like the biggest part of it. Like, yeah, you can have fun with that and just go ham with it.
And of course, about Narissa being like an incredible singer and stuff, but I'm not like super deep into the lore. I'm one of the people that lean more into the streamer rather than the lore, but I'll get into that later. However, good point. When VTubers get into their lore, they have fun with it, and usually when they have fun with it, they're a lot more fun to watch. Being happy is contagious, you know? I am a fiend for world building. I love lore and hearing about it. It being fun able to theory craft based on the lore that's been revealed. It's a ton of fun for me.
This is me. This is just me. I started writing out like a timeline for Shoujo Mythos because I was just so obsessed with it. I've not been able to finish it because well, I don't have the time, Chad. I'm so sorry. I know I promised, but I just don't have the time anymore. But back when I did have the time, just working on lore in theory craft and making timelines and everything was just my favorite way to spend time and engaging with VTubers, because it was like the combination of so many creative minds that are also talented creative. It just felt good, and I had so much fun with it. I find that important with VTuber lore as well.
Lore Andy. That is literally the definition of a lore Andy. They love to theory craft, they like to lore build, and hopefully one day we'll have a VTuber channel or some sort of a VTuber lore channel that kind of ties everything together in a nice video.
That's me. To be fair, I do react mostly to it. I don't make like MatPat videos, but that's me. Go. That's me.
That's not going to be me. I promise you that. It's fun for a bit, but streams and interactions between fans and the streamer will turn lore upside down anyway, which is the more fun part of it.
Yes! I do like that, because when you're streaming and like softly engaging with your lore, with your chat, who is most likely going to be unhinged, that's where it involves the most, and I love that.
Oh, I like that. I like that because it's true. Kiara's supposed to be a phoenix, and everyone calls her a chicken. The community gets to dictate the lore at the end of the day, which in my opinion is the most fun part of it. I agree. Subaru, being a very cute tomboy that loves baseball, all of a sudden did an ASMR stream, and now she's a duck. And guess what? She's fully embraced the duck. She is the living, breathing, like thing of a duck, you know? Pippa is a pink rabbit. A lot of people know her for being Walmart Pecora or a laughing seagull. Take your pick. Like, it's like one or the other. Bow! She's supposed to be a whale that sings beautifully. Actually, I think she wrote her own lore. I think she made herself a furry, and I think I
don't think she made herself a furry. She just exposed that fact about her. This is a tweet from 2022. She has so much more evidence more recently. Oh my god.
She made herself like pregnant or something. I don't know. But the fact that the community gets to shape the lore, even though you introduce something to them, let's say you give them a piece of putty. It's like, this is my lore. And then they go, and now that is your lore. I like that comment. Good comment. It's fun for the debut. It's fun if it comes up every now and then, but trying to stick too much to the lore could be stressful, and we don't want that. Being able to create continuity in VTuber lore can be a little weird, and that's why I think lore is kind of like a very secondary, even thirdly, how do you even say that? Like a secondary problem.
Tertiary, go. But yeah, I understand what he's saying. It kind of comes back to the thing where people lean too much into their lore, where it becomes not fun to watch. And then there's also the secondary part where it's just stressful to keep up with it, to keep remembering all the details and keep staying in character. And like, you can do a surface level, but it's exhausting to watch even. Like, I have a friend who is really good at writing her own lore, but I can tell that trying to stay in character, especially during more lore heavy streams, is exhausting. Literally, like, until body says no. Right? And like, yeah, lore should be a tertiary thing. Like, you should be entertaining. You should have a good attitude to work that entertaining thing with your audience. And lore should just be an icing on top. Lore is not going to fix things. If you don't have those other things, the lore is not going to matter. It's just a surface level thing that people can care about but won't stay for. Make sure that the rest of the foundation is good before you like think that you have to lean on your lore.
Like a secondary problem to a lot of people's whole brand, because yeah, it can be pretty stressful to make sure everything kind of lines up perfectly.
That's like a big reason why I haven't like really written any lore, because might be my autism, honestly. I just want everything to fit perfectly. Like, I have ideas for several forms, several outfits, several things, and I just don't know how to make them click and like work with each other. And I'm realizing I just need to let it go, and it can just happen over time. I can just improvise. I can just do one thing at a time and then just bullshit my way through any lore changes. It doesn't have to be perfect, it just needs to make enough sense, right?
Because yeah, it can be pretty stressful to make sure everything kind of lines up perfectly, and that's just how it is. I think I'm in the minority, but I think lore is silly and just ignore it. I can understand how people find it fun, especially if they're still in the Chuny days. It can lead to some fun memes though.
I feel like if you're part of the people that find lore so silly that you should just ignore it, that you're not entirely grasping why VTubers have the appeal they do. People just love people that like roleplay, love seeing a character. Like, there's a reason that a majority of the VTuber audience are just weeps, because now you can have a favorite anime character that talks and is on Twitter and streams and does dumb shit and plays video games. You're not only restricted to them being in an anime. You can have the best of both worlds, like you have with content creators. And like, I can see that some people just like to watch a VTuber as like a regular streamer, but if you think that lore should just be ignored, you're missing a part of why VTubers are appealing as they are.
Very true. Yeah, a lot of people think this way, to be honest. I don't think you're in the minority at all. It's kind of a fun additive, but I kind of dislike when someone announces a lore video. It kind of ruins the lore if you talk about it like that. If it's lore, interact with it in character, or it feels weird. Maybe it's just me, but it bothers me and I won't care about it as much.
That's an interesting take, not gonna lie. I feel like if people start doing that they're going to go about the lore as if it's happening in real time, or just doing it through roleplay, that you come into the territory again where people lean too much into their lore. I feel that you need just enough fourth wall breaking to keep people their attention. I don't know if that makes any sense, but I feel like there's just a balance between how much you are in character and how much immersion you're upholding, and where you break it. And I think that announcing a lore video, announcing new lore, and using a lore video as like a secondary medium even in character should be fine. Because if you go too hard into it, that might become stressful and not fun to watch. And in some cases, and I've seen it, it can be a little bit cringe even. And that's not an attack. That's just my opinion.
I think getting into the details of how someone portrays their own lore is a little bit, and you're getting too lost into it. People are able to express their own lore in whatever the way they want. And if it doesn't land for you, that's just the way it is. But you're not wrong for thinking this either. But every plug has a socket, and unfortunately your plug does not fit in that socket. I honestly don't care. I just want to see how good of a person they are while they are funny. I personally think this is the majority, but we'll get into that later. I subscribe to the John Carmack theory on lore story. Story in games entertainment is like a story in a porn movie.
I feel what?
It's expected to be there, but it's not that important.
Huh? I see the point they're making, but huh?
Yeah. Okay. That was a comment. To be honest with you, I kind of agree. I don't even know who John Carmack is, But sure. Oh shit, iTunes like, you guys talk about porn? I guess, yeah, VTuber lore is like a porn movie. It's expected to be there, but it's not that important. Okay. What an analogy.
I'm gonna keep that in. It's fun to have it there, but it's not that important. I'm so glad my chat is not this unhinged, because holy shit.
A lot of different opinions. People like it, people don't like it, people don't care. But, you know, let's keep answering this question of do people actually care about VTuber lore? And I think I'm gonna bring in or rein in my 2 cents. And I'll be completely honest with you. When I say people don't, or do people care? It's not necessarily mean like if they don't care, that doesn't mean that they don't like it. It's just that it's not a thing that they're looking for. So in my personal opinion, I don't think people really care about VTuber lore that much.
I think he's right, actually. I don't think in general people care as much as we think they do. Like, it's fun, people enjoy it, and like people are not against it. But if it's not there, I think the majority of people doesn't even realize it's not there. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, actually. It's there for the people who do enjoy it, and people like me who go back and watch videos that are a year old or older even, and jump on a new video when it comes out. But for the average viewer, they just watch a VTuber, and every 6 months or so a new video drops in, and they watch it, they enjoy it, most likely won't retain anything that was in it. Maybe the baseline, like the overall arcing story, but that's it. And I feel like saying that people don't care feels a bit harsh, but it's not like they don't care as in if it is played that they hate it. It's just maybe it's indifferent. I feel like indifferent is like a variation of not caring. You can enjoy something without caring about it.
I think what's to blame for that is the type of content that they're creating as a VTuber, streaming. Whenever they see streamers, they want to see a good personality. They want to see somebody funny or somebody entertaining, somebody new, somebody educational, somebody that can make them feel good, somebody that's rotund in certain areas. And I see a lot of,
okay, hold up.
somebody that's rotund in certain areas. And I see a lot of comments saying, oh, I'm in the minority, or, oh, this is a hot take, or people are not going to like me for when I say this. Personally, I feel like they're the majority of people watching VTubers. They're not really looking for an intricate lore type of thing with VTubers. And frankly, I'm not either.
I think that's a good way to phrase it. People are not looking for intricate lore, but they don't mind it being there, as long as it doesn't take away from the main content, aka the streams and the entertainment value and other videos.
But it's all part of the content creation game. If you're making an intricate lore or introducing something that requires some form of lore, don't let that stop you from doing it. But as a viewer, they're mostly looking for something entertaining, and lore can be entertaining. Like for me, I'm mostly looking for somebody that's funny, somebody that makes moments, somebody that makes jokes and memes. And that's ultimately what it comes down to. I think a lot of people mix lore and joke and memes, because ultimately that is their lore.
He is correct in that. Lore is not just a story that you wrote. Lore is everything surrounding someone. Like if you go to a VTuber's like wiki page and it shows all their nicknames, that's part of their lore. Even if it's not in universe or in canon, it's part of their lore. All of their outfits, all stupid jokes, something dumb they said on stream, confession they made, the way they play certain games, that's just as much part of their lore as like their animated universe or the canon of their character. It is not as black and white as it's sometimes presented.
You could definitely narrow this down to, what is lore? Is lore a story? Is lore something that you create
now we're getting philosophical territory.
To it being made?
What did I start?
Quote, huh? Is a story something you create prior to it being made? What a quote. I'm gonna put that right up there with Jaden Smith's Mirrors quote. And I personally think that people care about lore depending on what you define lore as. For example, Bao being impregnated by a wolfman from Elden Ring while she cooks in a kitchen in front of thousands of people.
Huh? I don't even want to know.
I want Blythe to breed me.
That's lore. Did you like it when Corone streamed for almost 24 hours trying to beat Kirby for the N64? That's lore. And I know that's kind of a cop-out answer, but truly, like, think about it. One of my favorite pieces of Zentreya lore is when she evolved into a gecko And the gecko was able to get into many different outfits, like a maid outfit or a Zentreya outfit. Yes, the gecko was able to make a Zentreya cyborg or an android or a mecha, whatever you want to call it, and operate it from within. And when she decides to come out of the Zentreya mecha, she's there in all her glory. Gecko Zentreya.
Fight me.
That's my favorite piece of Zentreya lore. So I do think people care
Okay,
about
that's
VTuber
funny, though.
lore. But if you truly want me to answer without being a cop-out, I don't think people care about traditional lore. You don't need to write an interesting or intricate world building. I think for the most part, people want to feel like they belong in a community and they want to see you make entertaining content. They're watching you to be able to
Preach.
see something that they possibly have never seen before. And that keeps them coming back. Funny moments, entertaining events, interactivity. That's what they truly care about. And that's why you primarily see a lot of VTubers do their debuts, introduce themselves with a little bit of lore, and then never really truly expand upon it beyond that. It's a very minuscule thing in a big project. And ultimately, I think the streaming lore is far more interesting than any lore that anybody could create. And that's not a insult to anybody that likes creating stories, because that's really cool too. And if you like doing that, keep doing that.
Yeah.
Who knows? You
Keep
could
doing it.
make a VTuber world or a VTuber story that is so interesting and so interactive, and you can mix all these different elements at once that a lot of people get sucked into it and be like, all right, what's the next chapter gonna be about?
The feature lore that I enjoy the most are the ones that is a collaboration between multiple people, where you see multiple people come together and what he says is kind of like on the same thing. It's not just a story, it's like you and who you surround yourself with, because they're equally as important. And I think that if we really try, that the VTuber cinematic universe could truly exist, where the stories of so many VTubers could be combined into a single world, a bit like Marvel. And I think that's infinitely more interesting than everyone having like a 1-minute introduction and existing in their own little pocket dimension.
Right now, I don't think there's anybody like that. And there was a comment that said it before, but a lot of the VTubers don't really lean into lore that much, because over time, when it comes to content creation, it gets really tiring to live up to a specific lore or a character.
To be fair, if you decide to be like a black hole VTuber or some interesting concept that would work in a comic or maybe some like short series, wouldn't necessarily work as a character to RP in, right? That's why there are so many restrictions on what kind of character you can play in D&D, because you need to be able to role play in it, because it's a role-playing game. Being a VTuber is also a role-playing game. So if you decide to become something that's very far from what you are and who you are, yeah, that's tiring. But if you pick something that's closer to your heart or something you're just passionate about, then it just happens on its own.
That's why a lot of people shape their personas to be very similar to their IRL
Like I said.
personas, while still having some form of escapism. And also because they might find it fascinating to be a cockroach with ginormous booba. But
Yeah,
anyways, that's my
exactly.
take on VTuber lore. And I think I like my take on VTuber lore.
I like your
I'm gonna
take too,
stick
Ko.
with it. I like the lore that gets made rather than created. I don't even
That's
know
a
what that
good
means
quote.
anymore, but it makes sense to me.
That
Like, come
makes-
on, do you
that's
think Korone
so-
could
I
create
love
a
that.
story where she got spooked by soap? Nah, it was just made like that. That's how it is.
Just
Hopefully you
happened.
guys can
Just
leave a
happened.
comment to see what your thoughts are. But let me know what you think of VTuber lore. I need to put on some Aquaphor. My lips are dry. Put that in my next
Mine
book,
as
huh?
well.
My YouTuber lore.
Jesus.
Dry lips McGee.
Dry lips and a dry mouth. Stay hydrated, chat.
Anyways, that's about it. Have a good one, everybody. Bye-bye.
That was a good video. That was actually a good video. With how the video is made, I can understand why my comment was not part of it, because I just wrote a giant paragraph on what makes VTuber lore important, and it wouldn't have fit in his video. Like, he could make an entire video on just my thread, right? But I think that everything he said is completely on point. VTuber lore is cool. There are people that care about it. Most people enjoy it, but you don't need it. And if you lean into it too much, then it can become frustrating, tiring, not fun to watch. And it's just a fine line that's so hard to be on the wrong side of. Even though lore doesn't matter that much, I feel like a baseline of context is kind of what makes VTubers interesting to watch, because their characters or people representing a character are not like actual people. Of course, they're actual people, and please treat these people as actual human beings, because the way some people can act towards anime characters, they just bar for bar do towards VTubers, and please don't be a weirdo. But I'm saying more in comparison to Flash tubers who just are themselves. They are not playing a character. Anyway, I will link Ko's video in the description down below, and please do check out his content in general. He reacts to VTuber clips, which is similar to what I do here. It's just clips and not lore. But I'm glad that someone who is very present in the VTuber sphere and makes content about VTubers, like I'm not meaning clippers that just repost moments of the streams, but like he makes content about VTubers, which not many VTubers, I'm saying VTubers, he's not a VTuber, not many people do, let alone people are not a VTuber themselves. So to have someone who has like 200,000 followers, Jesus, Ko, that's a lot of people. Just address it is great, because I get these questions all the time, and I feel good that I'm not the only one talking about it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed my reaction. Please check out Koefficient, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.